Hi, Peter Boolkah here, and welcome to today's edition of the Transition Guide. Now, joining me today in the studio is Helen Yu. She's the author of Ascend Your Startup, Conquer the 5 Disconnects to Accelerate Growth. Welcome, Helen.
Thank you, Peter. It's such a pleasure being here with you today.
Now, I do believe congratulations are in order because your book's #1, isn't it, on the New York bestsellers list?
It's the New York Book Festival business book category. It also achieved the Wall Street Journal bestselling author.
So a couple of really fantastic accolades there.
Thank you.
Now, what struck me about your book is actually it's a book on two fronts. It's a book on, obviously, your professional journey, but also about your personal journey as well, and actually how intertwined the two of those elements are. I wonder if you could share with us. I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts and your journey up to the top of the mountain.
Thank you, Peter. So let's start with why behind ascending Mount Everest, right? It was really to keep a sacred promise to my grandmother who raised me, and then to leave her ashes on a tall mountain. I felt unstoppable because I made up my mind that nothing would hold me back from my climb. So as you know, that I've never climbed any mountain prior to this experience. So everything started off on in my head, right? At the time, back 2007, internet was not widely spread. So that means really you have to really go to the library and talk to the people who been there, done that. It was quite an experience, but I felt it was another way to honor the grit and resilience grandma really taught me growing up. So that's why I wrote the book about
and it's quite interesting. You've never climbed a mountain, so let's go and try the most difficult mountain in the world.
Yeah, because she, before she passed away, three things she said to me: stay special, make the world proud, and spread my ashes to a tall mountain. I was raised by grandmother along with 9 cousins. They're all boys. I was only girl and the youngest. I was the only one who was by her side 5 minutes before she passed away. So there's a debate about, what's the definition of tall mountain, right? Some of my cousins said, you can just drop her out of a helicopter, whatever, we'll chip in. I said, no, that was not what she meant, right? Let's just make sure we do this at the tallest mountains. There is no more debate on if that's tall enough. And I knew her asking me to do so was not about herself. It's about she wants me to really stay strong without her being with me there. But her spirit always stayed with me over the years. What the most fulfilling was the lessons I learned from that experience. The 4 lessons I learned from that climbing experience, to this day, I apply that to the business world, how that really helped me propel my personal growth as well as the growth of many companies.
So what were the 4 lessons you learned?
Yeah, the first lesson was how you get prepared for something you've not done, right? As I mentioned earlier, like back in 2007, there's not many, you cannot Google anything. So you basically have to go to the library, research on mountain climbing, and then I talk to friends and who get me introduced to other people who've been there, done that. So it was tremendous amount of effort into researching on something that you haven't done, and then plus getting yourself really ready physically and emotionally. I could not afford a personal trainer, unlike other people, and where I have to make sure I was physically ready. That means you get up early every day, and then that's consistency, right? To practice, really to exercise every single day, and really with intensively to ensure you get your body really customized to that kind of climb. And secondly is the emotional preparation. The family member, my parents in particular, were very against that plan, right? And then you have to make sure you talk them into say, don't worry about it. And here's in the event that anything happens to me, here's everything you need to know, right? So you got that. And to me, really, that was a sacred promise I made. There's nothing else more important. My grandma was the world to me at that time. And so I want to make sure she taught me always deliver what you promised to do, right? That was one of the qualities she taught me. So that's the first lesson, how you get prepared.
And how far in advance did you prepare for that climb?
So it was about 6 months prior to the plan, right? I want to make sure I give enough time because unlike other experienced climber, they probably don't need so much time. For me, I want to make sure I put in enough effort. It was back in 2007, so I was working for Oracle at the time. Oracle acquired a company at the time where it allows me to have some time early in the morning, at night to exercise.
Good.
So the second lesson is adapt, right? No matter how well you're prepared, you always run into unexpected situations, right? I can give you an example. I bought this camera to make sure that I can capture the moments once we get there. And the camera broke right before I was about to reach the base camp. So I had to adapt to the situation where I took out the memory card from the camera body, hoping that someone else will show up with the same camera as Canon camera. And then fortunately, a girl who came from Singapore showed up. She did not have the zoom. I had the zoom. So I put my memory card inside her camera body. She used my zoom. We both benefited from that experience. But you have to really think fast. It's not like, hey, and what you're going to do, and then you just give up, right? That's one example. The second example is, I had 4 other people who had out the trip with me. Each of them dropped out, right? I was alone. The last set of journey was very lonely. And then how do you do about it? You can't just focus. You have to focus on what's within your control. Mentally, you have to be prepared to go alone, right? So making sure that you, as a founder or business owner or executive, you have to be prepared for anything that could happen to you. And then fortunately, I was prepared, right? We each carried a small little bottle of the grandmother's ash. If anything happens, we pass that to the next person. So we always, and then we also be prepared. What if none of us could make it? So we always tag along with other people. Among the 200 people trying that day, only 3 people made it to the base camp. So that's a small percentage, but there are so many incidents along the way. There's a reason why only 3 people made it. Fortunately, I was one of them.
It's interesting though, you talk about preparation, and it's probably quite indicative that so many of the entrepreneurs probably tuning in today's episode were not prepared for COVID, not prepared for the last 18 months. And they will say, well, we didn't know that let's say a pandemic was going to come. And I totally agree. No one knew a pandemic was going to come, but we all knew that at some point there was going to be a market crash.
Exactly. You're
and that's
right
your
on.
point to that preparation. You may not prepare for a pandemic, but you do prepare for things, for the market to shift and the market to go back into a downturn, because it always happened, always will happen. And that's a good point about preparation.
You are right on, Pete. None of us expected, right, that pandemic would hit. And that was, as a matter of fact, pandemic, even though it hit, it became a catalyst for change, right? I guarantee you that some of the changes probably will be permanent, right?
Absolutely.
And then, however, I mean, this taught us a lesson. There could be something else would pop up right down the road that we need to be prepared. Even as a human being, nothing to do with business personally, we have to be prepared for things that beyond our control. But then I always say, someone taught me that you really focus on what was in your control, right? Is the attitude, mindset, and efforts. Those are 3 things that was in your control. that you can focus on. You can't focus on, oh, what's going to happen, if there's a storm or tornado comes to, we're hit by that. You cannot control that, but you can be prepared if that happens, what you're going to do, right? How do you ensure, right? Yeah.
And I totally agree. And the other thing that you've spoken about, which I think has been a problem during this last 18 months, is that people haven't been flexible. When your camera broke, you were flexible, you were agile, you looked, and you made changes very quickly.
Exactly.
We've had people watch this bad movie for 18 months, not be flexible and waiting for, it's like in your instant, it'll be waiting for the camera to start working again.
Exactly.
What people have been doing is they've been waiting for the economy to go back to the way it was when it was never going to happen because the conditions have totally changed.
Yeah, exactly. You cannot just, some of the companies or businesses have had random success because of market momentum. That may not happen as often as we progress, right, in the next 5 or 10 years. So you have to have a strategy. I love the fact that you talk about digital strategy the other day. Digital tools is not digital strategy. Yeah. You have to not only the strategy, but you have to align that with your day-to-day execution. You have to be agile or resilient, right, to adapt to the really the situation. And the third lesson I learned from the climbing is, I was going to say acclimate, right? I don't know if you know the term. When you climb mountains, especially high altitude mountain, you can't just go from the base camp to the summit right away. You go to summit 1, you come back to the base camp, you go to summit 2, back to base camp again. So you go through that process to get your body used to the high altitude mountain. That process is called acclimate, right? No matter what we do as a business owner, you have to acclimate to the voice of the customer. At the end of the day, if you build a product solution, you want to make sure it's marketable, right? So you want to make sure you know exactly where the demand is, your product market fit, all those things. So you have to, constantly adjust and making sure that, what you're building the solution truly solve the problem that matters to people you want to sell to. And I would say Mount Everest base camp is a profound marker that reminds us sometimes in order to move forward, you have to take a step back.
Yeah. And literally, when you're talking about climbing Everest, you've got your 4 base camps and you're always going up and you're always coming down, you're going up, and you really have to acclimatize. And what's quite interesting is probably over the last 18 months, you're absolutely right. So many businesses out there haven't acclimatized to the new market, and they're still pushing forward, aiming for that summit. And they've probably got to the death zone and run out of oxygen.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. I mean, you talk about oxygen. Even though you have the oxygen with you, right? The people who dropped off the mountain the ones who were with me are the ones that are all stronger than I am, to be honest with you. They did not think I was the weakest, right? I had the most reaction, the beginning of the journey, all of them laughed about me, right? So they would go out and get exhausted, and, I listened to my Sherpa. As a US citizen, you have to hire, you have to get permit and hire someone to go along with you. I listened to every single thing my Sherpa told me, but some of the people could not make it because they did not listen. They heard what they were told to do, but they did not follow the instruction, thinking that they're much stronger. Right? That's where, at the end of the day, the people who get to the top may not be the most experienced, the strongest one, but they're the one who listen to the right people at the right time, and they're disciplined. They know what not to do, right? As a leader, learning what not to do sometimes can be more critical than knowing what to do.
And that's really fascinating you say that, because I would say that in this whole pandemic situation, so many entrepreneurs have been totally isolated. They've totally isolated themselves, believing that they had to find the answer to the challenge themselves without getting the right set of experts around them to help guide them to the summit.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, Peter. The last lesson I learned is you got to celebrate along the way, right? So when I returned, I celebrated. I was rolled into the hospital with IV. Then we celebrate after. So life is short. Building a business is not only thing that that matters to you and people, the loved ones, right? You have to, as going along the way building the business, summiting the mountain is not the end goal. The what you really want to be is to returning, right, coming down
Yeah.
from the mountain along with your entire team and then celebrating that accomplishment. That's where you want to be. That's being said, sometimes we forget to celebrate the small milestones along the way, recognizing people who got you there. And then you have to make sure that you have fun, right? Having fun doing that, having some meaningful interaction with people you care about, with the customers you care about, tell them, show that appreciation to them along the way. I actually, in the past 15 years, I start my day every single day writing 3 thank you notes to the people I appreciate. Sometimes the people already passed away. They can't never receive my note, but that really started my day with positivities. It's so critical for us to not being inundated with the unpleasant situation or the unhappy things, but for us to think about what got you here today. How think about cultivating gratitude is so important, right? But celebrating that with the people who matter and also equally important.
Yeah, more now than ever, because people would definitely appreciate it more now than ever, given what they've gone through. So when you look at right now the market, you look at what company you've seen so many companies going through this. What would be the sort of top tips you could give businesses to help transcend through this and come out the other end?
I would say that just think about. I would say just focus on things that within your control, and then understand what the solution that you have, like what problem you're trying to solve, and why you started this journey to begin with, and then what problem you're trying to solve, and then really who the problem you're trying to solve, who that matters to, and then also understand who else is trying to solve the same problem. And then to me, it's all about the value, right? You would really add to, or the measurable impact you can make on the society, community. So building business is not just about making the profit. It's bigger, right? Your business or value, core belief and value. Once that's really you figure out who you are, what kind of company you're trying to build, and then you're going to start seeing that people who are doing business or company doing business with you oftentimes have shared value with you. They wouldn't really be doing business with you unless they really appreciate the brand, right? The brand image is super critical. I actually talk about that. Marketing is how critical is to have a brand. I would say nail down the brand you want to build before you go out and start selling your product, right? Branding exercise is part of the early stage of the company, but what some of the founders have the tendency to focus so much on the product, right?
Most
Yeah,
do.
exactly.
They've got this wonderful product. Okay, I need to sell it. So most of them just come up with the concept and they want to just go and sell it.
Exactly. You think about I talk about BlackBerry sometimes. It's superb, the smartphone, right? When that came out, it was the best product. But where are they today, right? So it's not just about the quality of the product, it's about customer experience, it's about, the why people wanted to further expand or extend the adoption of that product, and what else can you do beyond that single product, right? So there are many things that's important to drive the sustainable growth for a company.
Which you cover in your book, don't you?
Yes.
And actually it's more important now than ever because the whole customer experience has changed dramatically, given the fact that our behavioral habits have changed over the last 18 months.
Absolutely, right. The technology has advanced, and then it changed the way we live, it changed the way we work. And then I, in my book, talk about the 5 disconnect you have to overcome to accelerate growth, right? As a business, goes through different stages of growth, right? Either you turn idea to product, product to market, market to scale. You have to uncover the 5 growth disconnect, right? There is product market fit disconnect, there's defined minimum disconnect, there's voice of customer disconnect, process disconnect, and measurement disconnect. Each of them is critical, right? If you don't uncover them at the right time, not knowing kind of what questions to ask as you go through each of the stage, you can really get yourself into, you can be off, right, the track, and then you can accelerate. In memory, if you ski, I'm not sure if you ski, if you do the downhill skiing, if your ski getting off of your feet, and then you can imagine what's going to happen to you, right? And then that's exactly the same. The challenge is for a business owner, they don't see when the ski, off their foot. So they are probably not knowing, not being aware of the disconnect, and that's getting them, they can go full speed for 10 years, realizing, wow, I wish I could slow down, right? After the 5th year, and then doing something differently. So this book is about a decision framework for founders to really evaluate where they are at, and then making sure they ask the right questions along the way to accelerate the growth.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And what I like about the book is actually the framework it's a framework basically, and you take them through the process.
Yes.
So it's very practical from that point of view. So is there any parting comments you would like to give the audience? Because I mean, there's a lot of information there, and I think the best way to sort of take on that information is to get the book.
Yeah, I would say, stay fearless, stay bold, and stay grateful.
So I think they're really wise words. And if people want to connect with you, what's the best way to connect with you?
They can find me through taigongadvisory.com, or they can find me on Twitter. My handler is YuHelenYu, so Yu, Helen Yu, or they can find me through LinkedIn, Taigong HYU.
Brilliant, thank you. Now, if anything's resonated with you today, you want a bit more information, feel free to head over to boolkah.com and get in touch. Helen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming today. And very importantly, remember, failing to learn is learning to fail. So please stay safe. And Helen, thank you.